Hello and welcome to Life Under Lockdown. I'm delighted once again to see, after a few months, not in the flesh but via video link, all the way from Medellin in Colombia, Father Peter Walters of Let the Children Live. How are you doing, Father?
I'm fine, thank you very much, John. How are you doing?
Doing well, very well indeed. Obviously, we as a parish locally, and my uncle as well, have been very, very close to Let the Children Live as a charity. And one of the things we are hearing a lot about nowadays in Scotland during this global pandemic is the need to stay at home. But for what's been preying in my mind is that there's many, many people who are homeless, in particular street children. How is that situation affecting you in Colombia?
Well, the lockdown was imposed here just before it happened in the UK. So far the virus hasn't taken hold here nearly as badly as it has in the UK. We've benefited from the sense of being much later in the process than most other countries and being able to learn from their experience. So far, I was looking on just before I came online, up until yesterday, there had been 4,881 reported cases in the whole country and 225 deaths. So we're nowhere near as badly hit as you have been. Yeah. But the lockdown is being fairly strictly imposed, and as you've rightly said, its greatest impact is on the weakest members of our society, the people who are forced to live or work in the street, because the authorities are obviously not letting them do that. And a lot of the Venezuelan refugees, because we have an enormous number of refugees from Venezuela in Colombia, as well as a lot of very poor Colombians, only survive from day to day. That what they earn working in the street one day, if they're lucky, will pay for a roof over their head for that night and something to eat. So they live from day to day. They don't have a large enough income to be able to rent an apartment. There's no social housing here. There's no council housing. So it is very, very tough for them because they can't work.
It's very troubling. It's very, very troubling to hear that. Obviously, you're set up and you do two main things. You have your two casas, your two houses for the children, and you also do outreach in the streets as well. So how... I know you've mentioned you're not allowed to go out in the streets, but do children still get to your casas, or what's happening there?
No, we have had to close both houses. Casa Walsingham, which is our day centre, has been closed and the children are not allowed to go there. But we have, by word of mouth, been able to contact gradually more and more of our families. The trouble is that the people who rent rooms by the night, often they have to go from one building to another, so they don't have fixed addresses. The landlords try to put the rent up, or they don't want to have children on the premises. And although legally they are not meant to just evict them, all they do is to switch the lights and the water off, or the gas off, so that people can't cook, they can't see, they can't wash, and eventually they move out. And so they move around an awful lot. And so it's very hard for us to contact them. But gradually, by word of mouth, more and more of our families have realized that we are very much in business. And fortunately, seeing which way the wind was blowing in the UK, we ordered a lot of non-perishable goods about 2 weeks before the lockdown started. And because we deal with wholesalers, and we always have large orders, but never as large as this normally, we've been able to restock ourselves and have been distributing food parcels. This is our main outreach at the moment. Just to give you some figures, I was looking. I got some figures here for you, because I imagine you'd be asking. I'm
not that professional.
273 food parcels so far in 6 distributions, which have gone to a total of 174 families and are benefiting a total of 823 people. So 343 children and 480 adults. Why the adults? Well, because obviously the benefit and the well-being of the children depends on that of the adults. And we can hardly say, well, you can have something to eat, but your parents can't. It just doesn't work like that. So we are very much still in business, and the parents can come on fixed days to Casa Walsingham to collect food parcels. And gradually, as we've been able to restock, we've been able to give some more support to some families who've already been helped and to reach out to other families. So our principle still is at the moment that we're not refusing our help to anyone who actually comes and asks for it. But what we can't do is to go out into the street looking for people to help.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how our media works in the UK. Obviously, you will not find any other story anywhere else just now apart from the impact of this virus, particularly in the UK. And it seems that these stories are going on the back burner. For a few months ago, it was all Venezuela and the problems in Caracas and the problems with Nicolas Maduro and all the fallout there. And then we seem to just, once that's not on our radar as on our news feeds, it's not in our conscience anymore. But yet the problem of Venezuela and the refugees there are still going on and still being felt. And this, I guess, this looming threat of the virus hitting there is scary for you.
And because the authorities there control the media in Venezuela, we really don't know what the official figures, well, the real figures are. And reports that are coming out by word of mouth and officially it means indicate that the situation in Venezuela is very bad indeed. But all we've got is anecdotal information, no figures. And although the border is officially closed, nonetheless, it's very porous and people can still come in and out. And some Venezuelan families have actually had to go back to Venezuela because they simply couldn't survive here. So it's for the street population, both Colombian and Venezuelan alike, things are very, very difficult. And even for the ones who are lucky enough to have a room, well, let me just give you one example of a Venezuelan lady who was talking to us yesterday. She has been able to rent a room. And she has 3 children. She actually asked us to take in 2 of them, the 2 boys, at the beginning of the lockdown, and they are staying with us now at Casabanatine. But the daughter and who is younger and the mother are in one room. Now, if the 3 children have been in one room, they're very lively children. Imagine what the pressure would have been like. They're desperate to get out. Because the lady's husband is working in Peru, she's on her own, and she's constantly being under pressure for people who are making passes at her and even trying to force the door of her flat to rape her. They've got bed bugs and fleas. So the conditions that they are living in are bad enough, but at least they're better than they would have been if the 2 boys had been with them. But in some families, up to 8 people are living in one small room. So you can imagine the pressure. Talk about social distancing. How do you social distance if you've got 8 people in one room? How do you protect yourself if you suspect you've got, somebody's got the symptoms?
It's terrifying. And obviously we are in a grave situation here with, our deaths are now well beyond 20,000. But if you compare it for the vast majority of people in the United Kingdom, the lockdown conditions are favourable. I know I'm very blessed to be at home, to have a garden, to be healthy. And just some of the examples you mentioned there, it just doesn't bear thinking about for us in this country, the conditions, that people are suffering.
Well, in the UK, I've been reading that incidents of domestic abuse has gone up alarmingly, both towards adults and children during the lockdown. Well, if that's what's going on in the UK, when the conditions are generally, as you said, better, imagine what must be going on now behind closed doors, and we won't find out about it until the lockdown eases. Now, as far as we know, the lockdown is meant to be starting to ease on Monday here. But we still haven't got details of how it's going to be done. We know that the schools aren't opening for another month here, and that the government has said that children are not to go outside until they can go back to school. So the children will still be locked in. And if the children are at home, what happens? The parents have to go out to work. They leave the children on their own in these little rooms. Again, the risk of abuse, the risk of fire, and other disasters is going to be enormous. And yet the street people are desperate to get out into the roads to start working again. But who's going to be their clients, and how are the authorities going to react if they say they've got to keep the street clear of the street people? Again, there will be problems. There have been riots in some of the shanty towns already because people are suffering from hunger.
Because the level I just think, this demonstrates clearly the importance of your work, and it demonstrates why, as a local parish and as individuals, we've been supporting your street, let the children live, the street children, because the work you do is so vital. One of the ways we do raise money for the street children is via parishes and parish appeals. Again, the lockdown has affected the entire world almost, and the parish appeals have dried up. How has that affected us, and how can we continue to support your street children during this time?
Well, I was expecting to do a 9-week summer fundraising campaign in the UK in May and June. Well, obviously that has all gone by the board, and the income that we were anticipating receiving then is not going to come. Now, thank goodness, some of our faithful donors are still giving month by month. But obviously, if they are hit very hard financially, some of them may have to reduce or even stop their support. But our supporters in Scotland have already been very generous, and I'm delighted to be able to say that thanks to the work of your uncle, George McAleenan, so far more than £72,000 has been raised in Scotland to help us. Wow. Now, that, again, is an enormous help, because although at the moment our outgoings are limited because it's mostly going on buying food, what we are expecting is an explosion of need once the lockdown starts to be lifted. And we just don't know what the future may hold for us, both over here in terms of a second wave of the virus, because that is going to be the danger that it will really get hold here if because we've seen in Brazil, just next door to us, it seems to be having a very high mortality rate, and that will happen here in the shanty towns if it gets out of control. So we don't know what's going to happen there, and as far as the UK is concerned, we just don't know what our income's going to be. So the work being done at the moment in Scotland to continue to raise funds for us is absolutely vital.
Yeah, I mean, is there any way that people who, if they can, obviously, given the situation here as well, some people are without work and things, but is there a situation where we can donate to you? How do we do that? Is there a way to do it remotely?
Yes, you can. If you look at our website, www.letthechildrenlive.org, there are ways that you can give online there. And you can also send cheques to PO Box 11, Walsingham, Norfolk, NR 22 6EH. Those are the two ways to reach us. We're still very much in business. And the other thing, which is in many ways even more important than giving, is praying for us, because many of our children are in both physical and moral danger, and they need the support of your prayers. So please, will those who see this program, pray for us.
Yes, I would definitely encourage everyone who's watching this to, if they're saying their daily rosary, to include the intentions for the street children, and especially for you, Father Peter, as well, for the work you've done over all these years, and through thick and thin, you've been there for those street children, and now you can hopefully eventually tick off a global pandemic to your repertoire of life experiences.
Well, here the churches are closed, but obviously I'm able to say Mass every day here in Casabanatine. And although officially we aren't meant to do this, on Sundays I go out with the Blessed Sacrament in the monstrance and go and give benediction from the street to all the buildings immediately around Casabanatine. and people come out onto the balconies, and somebody even starts playing a trumpet, and they cheer as the Lord goes by, and people sometimes come to and kneel in their doorways. And just behind us there is a home for elderly people, and they are particularly grateful. And these old ladies come out and pray as the Lord goes by. So I think it is very important that this church should still be seen to be present. And I am worried that when the analysis of what has been our response to all this is made, people will say, well, where was the church? And I think that in some countries the churches are still open, and I hope to goodness that we will be able to have the churches open here soon.
Oh yeah, I hope that's the case as well. I mean, there's various different questions. Obviously, there's different strands. There's people who want the churches open for private prayer, and there's also an argument for public masses to be restored. Maybe that's too soon, maybe it's not. It's trying to get the balance right. But I do agree with you. I think we're all, not just clergy, but I think laity as well, are thinking, how does the church look just now? I know there's a lot of priests in Scotland who are really feeling this. They've messaged me, I talked to them, and they're saying, we want to do more. We are also worried that if we do more, we'll be clamped down by the police. They will be also worried about spreading the virus themselves. So it's a really tricky scenario for them, It
is, but I think that the church needs not to be, should cooperate with the secular authorities, but not be dominated by them. The church has to make up her own mind what is the right response. And that means that everyone from the Holy Father to the bishops downwards needs to be giving clear guidance to the clergy in Christian terms. And we will then decide what should we, as Christians, we are going to do, what the church is going to do. And if there are consequences from the authorities, I saw a scandalous example in Italy a few days ago when the police broke up a mass, interrupted the mass in the church, although there were only half a dozen or so people in a big building. I think that those sorts of abuses of power by the secular authorities need to be confronted. And that's been taking place in some foreign countries. I hope it won't happen in Britain. I hope it won't happen here. Here, the police are turning a blind eye to what the clergy are doing. We are still allowed to go and visit the sick, but priests all over the country have been doing what I have been doing. And so at least...
That's very powerful. That's very powerful, because we have seen some priests, handful of priests do that here. There's still a bit of conflicted information about that. People thinking it's not possible. It is possible. But I'm glad to hear you did that, because that is powerful. I think people are denied the sacraments.
It's very much easier in a Catholic country than it is in a country like Scotland. So really, it's the clergy in Scotland who have a much tougher job than those of us in countries like Colombia have under the present conditions. And my adoration is for them, and my prayers are for them.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't know if I'm theologically on the right track, but I always think, people are denied the sacraments in a sort of global event of this nature. My trust is in God that this situation has been permitted by him for whatever reason. And
yes.
we can't limit God to only sacraments, because God is ultimately, he's the one who created the sacraments, but he's not limited by his own sacraments. So maybe I'm theologically not the right track.
He does guarantee his the sacraments. They are a means of grace on which we can rely. He has lots of other means of graces by which he can give his love to us. But nonetheless, perhaps this will teach us to value them even more. Yeah. And this is a time of crisis. And crisis comes from the Greek word for judgment. And we will be judged by the way we react to this crisis. And this is something to which Christians must rise and show that their charity will not be limited, their courage will not be limited by the challenge that is presented to us, and bear witness to the presence of the risen Lord.
Yeah, of course, exactly. The whole focus is, and our trust and our hope is in the risen Lord. And we'll get through it. This will pass. And we will. I'm quite hopeful about the future for certainly the church in Scotland. I think what we've seen, and it's maybe a bit different from Colombia, because a lot of people have good income here and they have access to internet. The church has become more virtual, which is good in a sense. So there's maybe that less feeling of being abandoned you maybe might see in poorer countries. So hopefully we'll come out stronger both here and in Colombia.
Let us hope and pray so.
So far, you're in our prayers, and we encourage everyone to find ways, if they can, to help you and help you do your important work, because we're very lucky and fortunate in the United Kingdom that we have a stable and safe country. So we're hoping that people will respond generously to this call for help, not just financially but also spiritually as well. So God bless you, and thank you for your time, and stay safe yourself.
Well, thank you very much indeed, John. You stay safe too, and God bless you and all of your viewers. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
God bless.